So, I'm 25, just recently married, and I thought I had my life pretty much together. I was finally starting to feel like things were on the up after what felt like forever trying to sort through my own life, stress, and healing. But now everything's falling apart around me, and I'm honestly at such a loss about what to do. For some quick background, I have one sibling, a sister, who's had her own battles with addiction. Thankfully, she's just starting to get her life back on track, but it's been a rough road. My parents divorced when I was 5 because my dad was dealing with drug addiction. We thought that chapter had closed, or at least been put behind us. But now they're divorcing again, and this time my dad has turned into someone I barely even recognize. Here's where things get crazy. My dad, who's in his 50s now, is completely blindsiding my mom by selling our family home. He's acting so cold and detached that it's like he's a different person entirely. Oh, and did I mention he's joined a band? Yeah, a literal band in his 50s, and it's like he's trying to relive some wild youth that he missed out on or something. He's totally checked out, acting like a complete sociopathic *** hole to my mom, my sister, and me. So, while all of this is happening, I'm living in another state, newly married, trying to balance a million things. My husband, my own mental health, and working on my master's degree, which is no small feat, or cost for that matter. Meanwhile, my mom has been calling me 10+ times a day because her world has basically been turned upside down in the last month. It's like one day she thought everything was fine, and then the next she's being told she has to either sell the house or buy out my dad, which she can't afford. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars. It's impossible. So now she's frantically trying to find an apartment that's cheap enough for her to afford on her own, and at the same time, figure out what to do with our family pets. They're elderly and need extra care, and she doesn't want to give them up, but she also doesn't know how she'll manage to take care of them when she's trying to find a place to live. It's heartbreaking because this is the home I grew up in. It's full of memories, both good and bad, but it's home, you know? And now it's all going to be gone in less than 2 weeks, and I don't even get to say goodbye to it. I don't live close enough to fly back and help pack or say my goodbyes in person. It's like this huge part of my life is just being ripped away, and there's nothing I can do about it. To make matters worse, my mom keeps asking me for help financially and emotionally. She doesn't have a stable job right now, and she's freaking out about how she'll pay rent for this new apartment. She's been asking me to help her out with around $200 a month, which doesn't sound like a ton, but for my husband and me it's a lot. We're on a tight budget ourselves because of my MA degree, and it's not like we're swimming in extra cash to throw around. And I want to help her. I really do. But it's putting this huge strain on me, especially since my mom and my dad are basically at war. If I talk to one of them, the other one freaks out. My mom gets upset if I even text my dad, which is hard because as much as he's being an *** right now, he's still my dad. I've been trying to share Bible verses with him, hoping that my faith might reach him in some way, but honestly, I don't even know if it's helping. He's just so checked out, and it's like he doesn't care about what he's doing to our family. The worst part is I feel like I'm being pulled in every direction. My mom has no one else to rely on except me, her elderly mother, who isn't in a position to help much. And my sister who, while she's making some strides, is still pretty unstable. My sister doesn't have a job, isn't in school, and honestly she's just not in a place to be able to help out the way my mom needs. So it feels like everything is falling on me to figure out. And it's starting to get overwhelming. My mom has nobody now, and I understand that she's panicking, but it's like I'm being dragged into this tornado of stress and chaos, and I don't know how to manage it anymore. I feel guilty because I want to help her, but at the same time I want to focus on my own life. I just got married, and I feel like I haven't even had a chance to enjoy that yet because I'm so wrapped up in all of this drama with my parents. It's like I'm being robbed of this time to focus on my own happiness and my marriage because I'm stuck trying to hold everything together for everyone else. And on top of that, I feel this huge pressure to help my mom financially, but my husband and I really can't afford to be giving her money every month. $200 might not seem like a ton, but when you're on a tight budget and trying to pay for school and everything else, it adds up fast. And what makes it worse is that I feel like my sister should be stepping up more too. It shouldn't all be on me to help our mom out. Like, I get that she's been through a lot, but we all have. It's time for her to start contributing, even if it's just $100 a month. It's not fair that I'm the only one who has to sacrifice my financial security to help our mom. But then I feel guilty for even thinking that because I know my sister is in a tough spot too. She's still trying to get her life together after everything she's been through with her addiction, and I don't want to put extra pressure on her. But at the same time, I can't keep carrying this weight all on my own. It's too much. And I don't know how to talk to my dad about any of this. He's so checked out and caught up in this weird midlife crisis band thing that I don't even know if he would listen to me if I tried. I've tried reaching out with Bible verses, hoping that maybe he'll find some comfort in faith, but it's like talking to a brick wall. I want to ask him why he's doing this, why he's throwing everything away, why he's abandoning us like this, but I'm afraid it won't even matter. It's like he's already made up his mind that he's going to live this new life, and there's no room for us in it anymore. I don't even know what I'm looking for by posting this. I guess I just needed to get it all out. It's been such an emotional roller coaster, and I feel like I'm carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. I want to be there for my mom, but I also want to focus on my own life and marriage. I don't know how to find the balance between helping her and protecting my own mental health. And I don't know what to do about my dad. I feel like I've lost him, but he's still here, physically at least. It's like I'm mourning the loss of a relationship that I thought we had, and I don't know how to move forward from that.
So, my parents have been married for 25 years. Well, kind of. They actually divorced when I was around 5, got back together after a few years, and remarried. Honestly, it's always been a bit of a mess. Their marriage was never exactly the picture of health or happiness, so when my dad suddenly decided he wanted a divorce again last week, it wasn't like I was completely blindsided. But I guess I'm still processing the fact that this is happening for Rayal. Again. The weird thing is, this time, I think my dad's reasoning is different. There's been some speculation about infidelity. I don't have all the details because both of my parents are being incredibly tight-lipped about everything, but from what I can piece together, I think my dad might be cheating. He's the one who initiated the divorce, and it came out of nowhere for my mom, who's been completely devastated. And to be honest, even though I wasn't shocked, I didn't see it coming either. Things weren't great between them, but I didn't expect him to just drop a bomb like that and walk away. Meanwhile, in the middle of all this chaos, my boyfriend of 7 years proposed to me just a few days after the divorce news hit. We've been together forever, and I've been waiting for this moment for so long. So of course, I was over the moon. I said yes immediately and couldn't wait to share the news with everyone. I mean, we've been together for 7 years, and the proposal was beautiful. We were out hiking, which is something we both love to do, and he got down on one knee when we reached this gorgeous overlook with the mountains in the background. It felt like something out of a dream, and I was so excited to start planning the next chapter of our lives together. It felt like, finally, something was going right in my life amidst all the other chaos. Naturally, I wanted to share the happy news with my friends and family, so I posted an engagement photo on Facebook with a short status. Nothing major, just a cute picture of us with a ring, and a little caption about being excited for the future. I figured people would be happy for me, especially since we've been together for so long and most people who know us have been waiting for this moment just as much as we have. But, of course, my family finds a way to make it all about them. A couple of days after I posted the engagement photo, my sister called me and said she had overheard my mom and grandmother talking. Apparently, they thought it was in poor taste for me to post about my engagement when my parents' divorce is happening. My grandmother hasn't even said anything to me about it directly, but my mom? Oh, she was more than happy to let me know how she felt. She called me and said, "Don't you think it's a little insensitive to be celebrating your engagement right now with everything that's going on?" I was honestly so taken aback that I didn't even know what to say at first. Like, excuse me? Just because their marriage is falling apart doesn't mean I'm not allowed to be happy about my own relationship, right? But the way she said it just made me feel like I'd done something terrible. She wasn't even congratulating me or asking about the proposal or how I'm feeling about my own engagement. It was all about her and how awful things are with my dad, which, don't get me wrong, I get. She's going through a rough time, but am I really not allowed to have a moment for myself? And what really stings is that my mom and grandmother are the ones who are supposed to be the happiest for me, right? Especially my mom. This should be a time when we're celebrating, talking about wedding plans, and picking out venues or dresses or whatever. Instead, every time I bring up anything remotely related to my engagement, she just brushes it off or changes the subject to how awful my dad is being. And don't even get me started on my dad. He's completely checked out and doesn't seem to care about anything but his own issues. It's like my engagement is just an annoying footnote in their drama, and I feel like I'm being guilt-tripped for even mentioning it. To make matters worse, my mom has already started laying down these ultimatums. She's saying that if my dad comes to the wedding, she won't be able to go. Like, seriously? The wedding is about me and my fiancé, not about their problems. Why should I have to choose between my parents on my wedding day? I don't even want to think about how much more complicated this is going to get as the wedding planning goes on. It's just so frustrating because I haven't really even talked much about my engagement with her in the first place, knowing what she's going through. I've been trying to be respectful of her situation, even though I have every right to be excited about this huge moment in my life. But the one time I did try to talk to her about it, she completely shut me down. I don't think I'm being unreasonable here. I'm not asking her to put her feelings aside entirely, but is it too much to ask for a little bit of happiness for me? Honestly, I've been feeling really resentful towards both of them. It's like, no matter what I do, it's never the right thing. If I don't talk about my engagement, I feel like I'm minimizing this major moment in my life, but if I do talk about it, I'm being insensitive. I just feel stuck. And the worst part is that I'm starting to feel like I can't even enjoy my engagement because of all this drama. I should be celebrating with my fiancé, getting excited about wedding planning, and just being happy, but instead, I'm constantly walking on eggshells around my family. I feel like I'm not allowed to be happy about it because of the divorce, and that's just not fair. I mean, am I wrong for thinking that I still deserve to enjoy my engagement? I get that their divorce is messy and painful, but that doesn't mean I should have to put my life on hold or pretend like I'm not excited about my own future just because things aren't going well for them. I feel like I've been waiting for this moment for so long, and now that it's here, I'm not even allowed to enjoy it. And it's not just my mom, either. My grandmother, who is usually the most supportive person in my life, hasn't said anything to me about the engagement. Not a single word. I know she's caught up in all the drama with my parents, too, but it still hurts that she hasn't even acknowledged it. My sister said she overheard them talking about how poorly timed it was for me to post my engagement photo, and I just can't help but feel like they're being incredibly unfair. It's not like I planned the proposal around their divorce. It's been 7 years coming. Am I just supposed to hide my happiness because their marriage is falling apart? To top it all off, my fiancé is starting to feel the tension, too. He's been really supportive and understanding, but I can tell it's bothering him that we're not able to just enjoy this time. He knows how important family is to me, and he wants to be able to celebrate with them, but instead, we're both dealing with this mess. It's like a dark cloud hanging over what should be one of the happiest times in our lives. We're supposed to be planning a wedding, but instead, we're constantly navigating family drama. And what really kills me is that I just don't know how to fix it. I've tried talking to my mom about how I'm feeling, but every time I bring it up, she just shuts down or starts talking about how terrible my dad is. She doesn't want to hear about how I'm feeling or how this is affecting me, too. It's all about her pain, her anger, her situation. And while I do understand that she's going through a lot right now, it's not fair for her to put all of that on me. I even tried reaching out to my dad, hoping that maybe he'd have a different perspective or be a little more supportive, but he's just as bad. He's so wrapped up in his own issues that he barely even responded when I told him I was engaged. It's like he's completely checked out of my life right now, and that hurts. He's my dad, and I want him to be excited for me, but instead, he's just not there. And I'm dreading what's going to happen when the actual wedding planning starts. I mean, if they're already making this much of a fuss over an engagement post, what's going to happen when I have to send out invitations or decide who's walking me down the aisle? My mom's already said she won't come if my dad's there, but I can't exactly not invite him. He's my dad. But I also can't imagine my wedding day without my mom there. It's a lose-lose situation, and it's stressing me out just thinking about it. At this point, I'm just feeling lost. I don't know how to navigate all of this without completely losing myself in the process. I want to be there for my mom, but I also need to set boundaries because this is my life, too. I deserve to be happy about my engagement and to celebrate this moment with the people I love. But right now, it feels like that's impossible because my family is falling apart.
I'm sitting here typing this because I honestly don't know what else to do. I feel like I'm trapped in this nightmare that I can't wake up from. My life was supposed to be different. I wanted a family, a happy one, and now everything's just broken. So my husband, or I guess I should start calling him my soon-to-be ex-husband, though that process is so far from happening it feels like a joke, left me and our kids to go live with his new girlfriend. Yeah, that's right. The one he cheated on me with. And the worst part? He's not even really gone. He still barges into the house like it's his. Never knocks, never gives a heads up. Just walks right in, makes a mess, belittles me, criticizes every little thing I do, then leaves to go back to his girlfriend. He lost his job recently too, which makes things even worse. I wanted to divorce him, just be done with him, but now I can't because if I do, I'd have to pay him alimony. Me. I make near minimum wage, barely enough to support myself and the kids, and somehow in this messed up world I'd have to pay him if we divorce now. How is that fair? How did my life end up like this? I'm exhausted. I feel like I'm constantly fighting a battle I can't win. I do everything for our kids. I'm the one who makes sure they're fed, that they have clean clothes, that the bills are paid, barely, that they get to school on time, that they're emotionally taken care of. But every time he shows up, he has something to criticize. He'll nitpick at the smallest things, like if the house isn't spotless, because, I only have 2 kids and a full-time job to juggle, or if one of the kids is acting up. As if he's done anything to help. He just stands there, pointing out my supposed failures while he's the one who abandoned us in the first place. And it's not just me who's suffering. My kids, my poor kids. They're 9 and 6, and they're going through so much. My 9-year-old has suddenly developed anxiety. I mean, how could he not? He sees his dad come in and out of the house, acting like a stranger half the time, yelling, criticizing, belittling both me and them. He's checked out, emotionally unavailable, and yet gets angry at them for doing normal kid stuff, like being loud or making a mess. My son used to be so carefree, but now he's constantly on edge, always worried about doing something wrong. It's heartbreaking. And my 6-year-old? She's terrified. She won't go anywhere alone. Not even inside the house. I have to be with her every second. I have to go with her to the bathroom. I have to stand by the door while she gets dressed, and if I leave the room for even a minute, she freaks out. I know it's because she feels abandoned. They both do. He's still here sometimes, physically, but he's not really there. Not in the way they need him to be. And the constant back and forth with him showing up, making a scene, then leaving again, it's doing so much damage. I feel like I'm watching my kids fall apart and there's nothing I can do to stop it. I try so hard to be strong for them, to hold it together, but inside I'm crumbling. I just don't understand how he can be so selfish. How he can just throw our family away like this and then expect to walk in and out of our lives like nothing's changed. Like he can still play house when it's convenient for him, and then disappear when it's not. I hate him. I've never hated anyone in my life before, but I hate him with every fiber of my being. I hate him for being so selfish. For ruining our family. For putting me in this impossible situation where I can't even divorce him without it financially ruining me. For turning our home into a place of chaos and fear instead of the safe haven it was supposed to be for our kids. And for making me feel like this broken, bitter shell of the person I used to be. There are days when I feel like I can't keep going. Days when the weight of it all feels so heavy that I just want to disappear. I'll be doing the dishes or folding laundry, and suddenly I'll just feel this overwhelming sense of hopelessness. Like I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel anymore. I've thought about what it would be like if I just wasn't here anymore, but I know I could never do that to my kids. I couldn't. They've already lost enough. They need me. Even if I'm barely holding it together, even if I feel like I'm drowning most days, they need me. But that doesn't make it any easier. I feel so lost. I don't know how I'm supposed to keep going like this. Every time I think I've hit rock bottom, something else happens to drag me down even further. And the worst part is I feel so alone in all of this. Sure, I have friends and family, but no one really gets it. No one understands what it's like to live with this constant fear and anxiety, not knowing what's going to happen next. Not knowing how I'm going to get through the next day, the next week, the next year. People always say that divorce is better for kids because they don't have to grow up in a household with a dysfunctional relationship. But you know what? That's not always true. Even though he's technically gone, we're still dysfunctional. He's still here, still causing chaos, still making everything worse. It's not like the second he left, things got better. In fact, it feels like they've gotten worse in some ways because now I'm carrying all of this on my own. And my kids are still growing up in the middle of this mess. I don't even know if I'll ever be able to date again. The idea of trusting another man after all of this? Yeah, no thanks. I don't have the energy for it. I don't have the trust for it. Maybe when the kids are older, maybe when things settle down, if that ever happens, I'll feel differently. But right now, the idea of letting someone else into my life feels impossible. I don't want to be hurt again. I don't want to open myself up just to have it all fall apart again. So what does that mean for my kids? Are they going to grow up seeing their mom as this bitter old lady who's given up on love? 'Cause that's what it feels like. I don't want them to think that this is normal, that this is what relationships are supposed to be like. But I also don't want to bring someone new into their lives when they're still trying to process all the trauma from their dad leaving. It's a lose-lose situation, and I just don't know how to navigate it. I keep asking myself, how is this my life? How did I end up here in this mess? I never imagined this would be my future. I never thought I'd be the woman whose husband leaves her for another woman, whose kids are suffering because of it, who's barely making ends meet and feels completely stuck. I always pictured a happy family, a loving partner, kids who felt safe and loved. And now I don't know what the future holds. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. It's like I'm living in this constant state of survival. I wake up, I take care of the kids, I go to work, I come home, and I do it all over again. I don't have time to process my own emotions because I'm too busy holding everything together for everyone else. I'm just surviving. And I know that's not sustainable, but I don't know how to change it. I don't have the luxury of breaking down. I don't have the luxury of falling apart because if I do, everything else will fall apart with me. I wish things were different. I wish I could see a way out of this mess. But right now, it feels like I'm stuck in a tunnel with no light at the end. I'm angry. I'm heartbroken. I'm exhausted. And I don't know how to fix any of it. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I don't know if anyone can really help or if I'm just venting into the void, but if anyone has any advice on how to get through this, I'm all ears. Because right now, I'm just trying to survive and it feels like that's all I can do.
It all started off like a dream. You know, the type of whirlwind romance that sweeps you off your feet. I met my husband, well, soon-to-be ex-husband in college. He was everything I thought I wanted. Charming, funny, smart. We stayed up all night talking about our future together. We had those deep conversations about life, about family, about what we wanted in 10 years. We talk about how many kids we'd have, where we'd live, how we'd balance everything. You know, like every young couple does, where it feels like the whole world is just waiting for you to shape it. I was so in love. God, I was in love. I thought I found the person I was going to spend the rest of my life with. And honestly, that's what makes all of this so hard. Because somewhere in the back of my mind, I still remember that version of him. The version that convinced me he was perfect, that we were perfect together. Sometimes I even wonder if that person ever really existed. Or if I just saw what I wanted to see. But you know, they say hindsight is 20/20ths, and now that I'm looking back, all the red flags that I ignored are so painfully obvious. We got married pretty quickly after graduation. It felt right at the time. Everyone was excited for us. Our parents, our friends. We had this beautiful outdoor wedding. Nothing too fancy, just enough to celebrate with the people we cared about most. I wore this simple, flowy dress, and he looked so handsome in his suit. I remember standing up there, holding his hands and thinking, this is it. This is the start of everything I've ever wanted. But what I didn't know then, what I couldn't have known, is that wedding day, that was the peak. That was the highest point, the best it was ever going to be. Because almost immediately after we got married, things started to change. It wasn't overnight, not exactly. It was more like this slow, creeping shift, so subtle at first that I didn't even realize it was happening. But once it started, it never stopped. I'd ask him to help out around the house, and he'd give me this look, like he couldn't believe I was actually expecting him to do something. At first, it was just little things, like him leaving his clothes on the floor instead of putting them in the hamper, or expecting me to cook dinner every night after work. I thought, okay, he's adjusting, we're both adjusting. Marriage is new for both of us, so I didn't push too hard. I thought I just needed to be patient, that he'd step up eventually. But the more I waited, the more I realized that stepping up wasn't in his plan. His plan was to let me do everything while he sat back and reaped the benefits. And every time I brought it up, he'd twist it around. I swear, he's like a magician with his words. He could take any complaint I had and make it seem like I was the one being unreasonable. Like I'd ask him, "Can you help me clean up the kitchen after dinner?" And his response would be, "I've been working all day. Don't I deserve to relax when I get home?" And I'd feel guilty, like maybe I was asking for too much. I'd start second-guessing myself, thinking maybe I just needed to lower my expectations. Maybe this was normal. And then, of course, came the baby. I was so excited when I found out I was pregnant. I mean, I was nervous, obviously, but mostly I was excited. We had always talked about having kids, and I figured maybe that would be the thing that brought us closer together. Maybe becoming parents would snap him out of this rut he seemed to be in. But again, I was wrong. The pregnancy itself was hard. I had morning sickness that lasted all day, and I was constantly exhausted. Meanwhile, he was still expecting me to do everything. Clean the house, cook dinner, do the grocery shopping. I was dragging myself through each day, counting down the minutes until I could collapse in bed. And him, he didn't lift a finger to help. If anything, he seemed annoyed that I was tired all the time. Like my exhaustion was some kind of inconvenience for him. I remember one night, I was 7 months pregnant, and I asked him to rub my feet because they were so swollen I could barely walk. He sighed like I was asking him to run a marathon, then gave me the laziest, most half-hearted foot rub in the history of foot rubs. It lasted maybe 2 minutes before he got up and went back to his video games. That's another thing. The video games. I don't have anything against gaming in general, but when it becomes your entire life, that's a problem. I can't even count how many nights I went to bed alone because he stayed up until 3 or 4 in the morning playing games. And then he'd sleep in until noon the next day, completely oblivious to the fact that I was up with the baby, handling everything on my own. When our baby was born, I thought, this is it. This is the moment everything changes. I thought seeing our child, holding them for the first time, would snap him out of whatever funk he was in. That he'd suddenly realize, oh wow, I'm a dad now. I need to step up. But it didn't happen. Not even close. In the hospital, he was on his phone more than he was paying attention to me or the baby. And when we brought the baby home, it was like nothing had changed for him. Sure, he'd hold the baby sometimes, but only when I handed them to him. He never offered. He never took the initiative. It was like he still expected me to do everything, just like before. Except now, on top of keeping the house together, I was also taking care of a newborn. I can't even describe how exhausting those first few months were. I was barely sleeping, and when I did sleep, it was in these short, broken increments because the baby was waking up every couple of hours to feed. I was running on fumes, but still, I had to be the one to handle it all. I remember one night, I was so tired I could barely keep my eyes open. The baby had been crying for what felt like hours, and I was at my breaking point. I went into our bedroom and said, "Can you please take the baby for a while? I just need a break." He looked at me like I just asked him to solve world hunger. "I have work in the morning," he said, like that was a valid excuse to not help with his own child. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. But instead I just nodded, went back to the nursery, and kept rocking our baby until they finally fell asleep. That's when I started to realize just how alone I was in this marriage. It wasn't a partnership. It was me, doing everything, while he coasted along, doing the bare minimum. And the worst part, every time I brought it up, every time I tried to have a conversation about how I was feeling, he'd find a way to gaslight me into thinking I was the problem. "You're just hormonal," he'd say. "You're overreacting. It's not as bad as you're making it out to be." I started to wonder if he was right. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was just tired and overwhelmed, and that was making everything seem worse than it really was. So I stayed quiet. I kept my head down and tried to push through it, but the resentment kept building. Every time I saw him sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone while I was juggling a million things at once, I could feel it growing inside me like this dark, festering thing. I hated him for making me feel like I was alone in this. I hated him for not being the partner I thought he was going to be. The first time I thought about leaving, it was more of a fantasy than an actual plan. I was in the middle of cleaning up after dinner, because of course he didn't help with that. And I had this fleeting thought, what if I just left? What if I packed up the baby and left right now? It seemed impossible at the time. I didn't know how I'd make it work. I wasn't even sure where I'd go. But the thought was there, lurking in the back of my mind, waiting for the right moment to come forward. That moment came a few weeks later. We got into another argument, one of the many we've had over the past year, and this time I didn't hold back. I told him I was done. I told him I couldn't do this anymore, that I deserved better, that our child deserved better. He looked at me like I was crazy. He didn't believe me. "You're not going anywhere," he said, so sure of himself. And maybe he was right. I mean, I'd thought about leaving before, but I'd never actually done it. But this time felt different. This time, I felt like I had nothing left to lose. I started packing a bag, putting together everything I'd need for the baby. I could hear him in the other room, still playing his video games, completely unfazed by the fact that his wife and child were about to walk out the door. But then, just as I was about to leave, he came in and stopped me. He said all the right things, promised he'd change, that he'd do better, that he loved me and didn't want to lose me. And I believed him. I put the bag down. I stayed. But nothing changed. The promises he made, they were just words, empty and hollow. He didn't do better. He didn't step up. He just went right back to the way things were before, and I was stuck in the same miserable cycle, trying to convince myself that staying was the right thing to do. And then I tried again. A few months later, after another fight, I packed my bags again. This time, I made it as far as the front door before he stopped me. Same story. Same promises. Same cycle. I stayed again. You know when you reach that point where everything just feels unbearable? That's where I'm at right now. It's not one big thing that got me here. It's the small things, the little cracks that have been there for a while, growing deeper and wider until the whole thing just splits apart. I don't even recognize my marriage anymore. It's like I'm watching my life happen from the outside, and I just keep thinking, how did it come to this? He's a stay-at-home dad now. Or at least that's the title he gives himself. But if you actually look at what he does during the day, it's laughable to even call it that. I work full-time, and the expectation was that he'd be home taking care of our baby, handling some of the housework while I was out. I thought we had an understanding. But I've realized that he thinks just being physically present in the house counts as being a stay-at-home dad. And honestly, that's all he is. Physically present. Mentally, he's somewhere else entirely. From the moment I leave for work until the moment I get home, he's glued to his phone. Scrolling, texting, watching videos, doing anything except actually parenting. Every day, I come home and find our little girl in front of the TV, her eyes glazed over, and it makes my stomach turn. This wasn't what I wanted for her. When I was pregnant, I had all these big ideas about how we were going to raise her. No screens until she's 2, healthy food, lots of books, and outside time. You know, like all those parenting blogs and books talk about. But the reality is so far from what I imagined. It feels like a cruel joke. I've tried talking to him about it, about how I don't want her in front of the TV all day, but he just brushes me off. He acts like I'm the one being ridiculous, like I'm asking too much by wanting him to, I don't know, actually interact with our daughter. And when I suggest alternatives, like maybe reading to her instead of just parking her in front of a screen, he gets defensive. Every single time. It's like any suggestion I make is an attack on him. And God, the food. That's another thing. I've tried so hard to make sure she's eating healthy, whole foods. I wanted her to have a good start, to avoid all the junk food and processed crap as long as possible. But he doesn't care. He'll give her anything that's convenient for him. Chips, cookies, frozen meals. I've walked into the kitchen and found her sitting there with a pile of snacks in front of her. Stuff that's way too salty, way too sugary. And when I say something, he rolls his eyes and says, "She's fine. Stop being so uptight." It's gotten to the point where I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle. I've had to make peace with the fact that my daughter's not going to have the screen-free, organic, perfectly curated upbringing I envisioned. At least not while he's involved. And as much as that kills me inside, I try to pick my battles. But it's hard. So hard. And then there's the vape. God, the vape. I don't even know why I was surprised. He's careless about everything, so why should I have expected anything different when it comes to something as dangerous as that? I've told him over and over again to keep it out of reach, to be careful, but he doesn't listen. He just leaves it lying around like it's no big deal. And a couple of weeks ago, I walked into the living room and saw my baby girl with it in her mouth. She was gnawing on it like it was one of her toys, and my heart just stopped. I yanked it out of her hand so fast. She started crying, but I didn't care. All I could think about was what could have happened. What could still happen if I don't keep an eye on him every second of the day? I confronted him about it, of course, and he just shrugged it off. She's fine, he said. You're overreacting as usual. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab him and shake him and ask him what the hell was wrong with him. How could he be so reckless with our baby's safety? But no matter how many times I try to get through to him, it's like he's on autopilot, coasting through life, oblivious to the fact that he's a father now and needs to act like one. And it's not just the vape. The other day, I found his pocket knife open, just lying on the coffee table within reach of our daughter. I couldn't believe it. It's like he has no concept of danger, no awareness of how much harm he could be causing. I keep thinking, what if I hadn't found it in time? What if she'd grabbed it and gotten hurt? The fear sits in the pit of my stomach, gnawing at me, constantly reminding me that I can't trust him to keep her safe. And that's the hardest part of all of this. I love my daughter more than anything in the world, and the idea that she's not safe with her own father, it breaks me. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, I found out about the OnlyFans account. It still feels surreal when I think about it. I mean, I knew things weren't great between us, but I never thought he'd go that far. We share a lot of mutual friends, and one of them, let's call her Emily, has an OnlyFans account. I didn't care when I found out she had one. To each their own, right? People do what they want to do, and it's none of my business. But when I saw that my husband had not only subscribed to her account but had been chatting with her on there, that was it for me. That was the final straw. I came across the receipts purely by accident. I wasn't snooping or anything. He'd left his email open on the laptop, and there it was, notification after notification from OnlyFans, all linked to Emily's account. My heart dropped into my stomach. I clicked through, and that's when I saw the messages. They weren't just casual either. He'd been chatting with her regularly, sending her money, complimenting her, you get the idea. I just sat there, staring at the screen, not sure whether to cry or scream. I felt so stupid, so betrayed. How could he do this? How could he be so reckless? Not just with our marriage, but with our family, with everything. When I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. He tried to play it off like it was no big deal. It's just online, he said. It's not like I'm cheating. It's harmless. But it wasn't harmless. It wasn't just online. It was a betrayal. A complete disregard for me, for our relationship, for everything we'd built. Or at least everything I thought we'd built. That was the moment I realized I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't stay in a marriage where I was constantly disrespected, where my concerns were brushed aside, where my child's safety was at risk because her father couldn't be bothered to take even the most basic precautions. I've tried. God, I've tried. But I can't do it anymore. The thing is, I haven't even talked to a lawyer yet. Part of me is terrified to take that next step because once I do, there's no going back. Divorce is a big word, a final word, and the thought of going through that, of putting my baby girl through that, scares me more than I can even say. But what scares me even more is the idea of staying in this marriage, of raising my daughter in a household where her father is irresponsible, checked out, and honestly, a bad influence. And yet a small part of me still hopes that this might be the wake-up call he needs. Maybe if I leave, he'll finally realize how much he's been screwing up. Maybe he'll see that I'm serious this time, that I can't keep living like this, and he'll finally grow up. Maybe he'll step up and become the father our daughter deserves. I know it's probably wishful thinking. People don't change just because you want them to, but I can't help hoping for our daughter's sake. I want her to have a good relationship with her dad. I don't want to take that away from her. But I also don't want her to grow up thinking that this is normal, that this is how men are supposed to treat women, how fathers are supposed to act. I just wish I had the courage to take the next step, to call a lawyer, to start the process, to put all of this behind me. But it's hard. It's so hard to make that final decision, to take that leap into the unknown. Because once I do, there's no going back. And as much as I know this marriage is over, as much as I know it's the right thing to do for me and for my daughter, I'm still scared. Scared of the custody arrangement. Scared that my daughter will be alone with him half the time, and I won't be there to protect her. Scared that she'll be left in front of the TV all day, or that he'll leave dangerous things lying around the house and something terrible will happen. Scared that I'll spend the rest of my life worrying about what's happening when she's with him. But I also know that I can't let fear dictate my decisions. I have to be brave. I have to do what's best for my daughter, even if it's hard, even if it breaks me. So here I am, standing at the edge of this cliff, knowing that I need to jump but terrified of what's waiting for me at the bottom. I've got my baby girl in one arm, and my heart in the other, and I'm just trying to figure out how to let go.
I don't even know where to start. If you told me 3 years ago that I'd still be living in the same house as my ex, while also being separated, I would have said you were nuts. But here I am, living out this twisted version of hell where we're going through a divorce and still sharing the same roof. It's like a sitcom, except no one's laughing, especially not me. We've been separated for 3 years. Can you believe that? 3 freaking years. But because of finances and just life being a mess, we're still living together. In the beginning, I thought it would only be temporary. Give us time to figure things out. Maybe save some money for when the real separation could happen. But temporary turned into months, then years, and here we are. I filed for divorce over a year ago, thinking, okay, this is it. This is the beginning of the end. But of course, nothing is ever simple, right? It's been a full year since I filed, and we've made 0 progress. Mediation. Total waste of time. We sat down with the mediator, and instead of actually working things out, she spent the entire time arguing about every little detail. I don't even know what the point of mediation was if we were just going to walk out of there with nothing resolved. I guess I went in with some hope that we could be civil, that maybe we could at least agree on something when it came to the kids. But nope. Nothing. We left that room in the same place we started. And now it looks like we're heading to court in January. And, of course, it doesn't help that we're still cohabiting. It's like every day is a reminder of how broken everything is, how stuck I am. We don't even talk anymore, except about the bare minimum, the kids, bills, schedules. The house feels like it's filled with tension, like the air itself is heavy. I go to bed feeling anxious, and I wake up feeling the same way. Some days, it's so bad that I can barely function. The anxiety just crashes over me, like waves I can't escape, and I feel like I'm drowning in it. I can't breathe, can't think straight. Honestly, I've been having these panic attacks where it feels like my chest is closing in on itself. My heart races, my hands shake, and for a few minutes, I'm convinced I'm dying. That's how bad it's gotten. I'm trying to hold it together for the kids, but it's tough. It's hard to focus on work, hard to keep up with daily life. Even basic stuff, like making dinner or keeping up with the laundry, feels overwhelming when you're just trying to get through the day without having a full-blown anxiety attack. I finally decided to book a therapy appointment. Well, actually, I booked 2 because I'm barely holding it together right now. I've been putting off therapy for way too long, thinking I could manage everything on my own. But clearly, that's not working. I know I need help. And maybe talking to someone who's not emotionally involved in all of this will help me sort out the mess in my head. But here's the kicker. She's finally moving out. I guess I've pissed her off enough at this point that she's decided it's time to go. I should feel relieved, right? After 3 years of this nightmare, you'd think I'd be jumping for joy. But instead, I'm just more anxious. I don't even know where she's moving to. She refuses to tell me, refuses to tell the kids. I'm sure it's some kind of power play, like she's holding on to this information because she knows it'll stress me out. And she's right. It does. She's supposed to move next week, but as of today, I still don't know where she's taking the kids. That's been eating at me. I mean, as their dad, don't I have a right to know where my kids are going to be? But she's all about control, and this is just one more way for her to keep control over the situation. The kids are already having a hard time with the separation, and now she's just adding more stress on top of that by keeping them in the dark. I've signed them up for therapy too because, honestly, they're struggling. They're doing well in school, at least academically, but emotionally, they're a mess. Their behavior has been off, and it's no wonder. They're anxious, confused, and probably scared, even if they don't say it out loud. I can see it in their eyes, though. The way they act out, the way they get frustrated over little things. It's all tied to what's happening at home, to the tension they feel between their mom and me. I try to shield them from the worst of it, but kids aren't stupid. They know something's wrong. They can feel the awkwardness, the silence between us, the fact that we're not really a family anymore, at least not in the way we used to be. I hate that this is their reality. They didn't ask for any of this, but they're stuck in the middle, just like I am. The worst part is not knowing how this whole custody thing is going to play out. That's what's really keeping me up at night, making my anxiety worse. Right now, we've got this informal arrangement where we split time with the kids as best as we can, but it's all been so chaotic. No structure, no stability, and with her moving out, everything's about to change, but I have no idea how. Are we going to have joint custody? Will the kids end up with her more than with me? What happens when she finally tells me where she's moving to? It's the uncertainty that's killing me. I've never been good with uncertainty. I like to have a plan, to know what's coming, to be able to prepare for it. But right now, everything is just up in the air, and I'm left here guessing, worrying, and spiraling. I'm scared of what's going to happen when we go to court in January. Will I get to see my kids as much as I want? Will they be okay going back and forth between two homes? Will I be okay? I know I'm not the only one going through this. Divorce is messy for everyone. But knowing that doesn't make it any easier. It doesn't take away the pit in my stomach, the sleepless nights, the constant panic that something's going to go wrong, that I'm going to lose my kids, or that I'm going to screw this up somehow. I feel like I'm barely holding on some days. And even though I'm getting help, I know this is going to be a long road. It's weird, though, because as much as I hate this whole situation, there's a part of me that feels guilty. Like maybe I could have done more to save the marriage. Maybe if I'd tried harder, if I'd been more patient, we wouldn't be here. But then I remind myself that it's not just on me. Relationships are a two-way street, and she wasn't willing to meet me halfway. She wasn't willing to work on things, to communicate, to make this marriage something that we could salvage. It wasn't just me. But still, the guilt is there. I feel it when I look at the kids, knowing that they're the ones paying the price for all of this. They're the ones caught in the middle, shuffling between two parents who couldn't figure it out. That's the part that gets me the most, honestly. The idea that I couldn't give them the stable, happy home they deserve. I know they're resilient, that kids bounce back, but it doesn't stop me from worrying about the long-term effects this might have on them. And the thing is, I don't hate their mom. I'm angry with her, sure, frustrated, but I don't hate her. She's still their mom, and I want them to have a good relationship with her, even if things between us are broken beyond repair. I want them to be happy, to feel loved and secure, and I know that means making peace with the fact that we're going to have to co-parent for the rest of their childhoods, maybe longer. But co-parenting, I don't even know how we're going to do that when we can't even agree on basic things. We can't even communicate without it turning into a fight. Every conversation feels like a battle, and it's exhausting. I'm tired of the fighting, the back and forth, the power struggles. I just want it to be over. I want to find some sense of normalcy again, whatever that looks like after all of this. I guess I'm holding on to the hope that once we get through court in January, things will start to settle down. Maybe we'll have a custody agreement that works for both of us and for the kids. Maybe we'll figure out a way to co-parent without constantly butting heads. Maybe I'll finally be able to breathe again, to stop feeling like my chest is caving in every time I think about the future. But until then, it's just a waiting game, waiting for her to move out, waiting for the court date, waiting for this endless divorce process to finally reach some kind of conclusion. In the meantime, I'm just trying to take it one day at a time. Some days are better than others, but most of the time it's a struggle. I'm trying to be strong for the kids, to show them that everything's going to be okay, even when I don't believe it myself. I don't know how this is all going to end. I wish I did. I wish I had some kind of crystal ball that could show me what life is going to look like 6 months from now, a year from now. But I don't. So all I can do is keep moving forward, keep putting one foot in front of the other, and hope that at some point things will get better. At least, that's what I keep telling myself. So here I am, still navigating this mess of a divorce, still dealing with anxiety that comes with not knowing what the future holds. The kids are still my biggest priority, and every decision I make is for them. I want them to grow up happy, well-adjusted, and loved, despite the chaos that's going on right now. And as for me, I'm trying to focus on work, trying to stay positive, trying to keep it together when everything feels like it's falling apart. Therapy is helping, I think. It's a process, and I know it's not going to fix everything overnight, but at least it's giving me a space to unload all of this without feeling judged. I'm also learning to let go of the guilt. It's hard, but I'm getting there. I didn't ask for this divorce, and I didn't ask for this messy, drawn-out process, but it's happening, and all I can do is make the best of it. The road ahead is long, but I've got to believe that there's a light at the end of it. I've got to believe that at some point, this will all be behind me, and I'll be able to move on. Not just for me, but for the kids, too. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. Stuck in this limbo, trying to keep my head above water, and hoping that eventually things will settle down. It's just a matter of time.